A woman convicted of the death penalty was released when she survived. Jane Austen referenced baseball 40 years before it was officially invented. And a soldier once survived a free fall of 22,000 feet. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected. In today's video, we've got 30 mind-blowing facts that will absolutely astonish you. So, grab a seat and prepare for a wild ride through the most unbelievable truths out there. Let's jump right in. Number 1. A sunburn is your skin cells committing mass suicide. When you get too much sun, your body initiates a process called apoptosis, or programmed cell death, to protect you. The UV radiations from the sun damages the DNA in your skin cells, and to prevent these damaged cells from potentially turning cancerous, your body forces them to self-destruct. This might sound extreme, but it's a clever defense mechanism to minimize further harm. So, next time you feel that painful burn, remember, your body is working overtime to keep you safe. Isn't it amazing how our bodies have such intricate ways to protect us? Number 2. Many of history's biggest disasters are caused by lack of sleep. The Exxon Valdez oil spill, for instance, occurred when the ship's third mate, who had only 6 hours of sleep in the previous 48 hours, failed to maneuver the vessel correctly. Similarly, the Challenger explosion in 1986 was partly attributed to the exhausted engineers who missed critical errors due to fatigue. The Chernobyl nuclear meltdown also highlights this issue. The operators, working a long and stressful shift, made fatal mistakes. These incidents underscore the crucial role of adequate rest in maintaining safety and preventing catastrophic events. Number 3. Zebra stripes are for repelling insects. In one experiment, scientists placed zebra look-alike coats on regular horses and compared the result to real zebras. They found that flies that would normally be attracted to the horses seemed to be extremely thrown off when attempting to make a landing. However, the horses' heads, which weren't dressed up in zebra stripes, still attracted flies. Number 4. Ben Franklin left thousands to Boston and Philadelphia, which they couldn't touch for 200 years. The man who coined the phrase, "a penny saved is a penny earned," lived and died by the mantra. In his will, he left the cities of Boston and Philadelphia, each £1,000 sterling, worth about $4,500 at the time, with the caveat that they could not touch it for 200 years. Both followed his wishes and in 1990 found that those few thousands were worth millions, thanks to the magic of compound interest. This remarkable tale shows how patience and financial wisdom can transform a small sum into a fortune, leaving a lasting legacy for future generations. How cool is that? Number 5. Real diamonds don't show up on an X-ray machine. There's an easy way to find out if your sweetie's a cheapie. Diamonds are made of carbon, which has a very low atomic number, 6 to 8, depending on grade. The lower the atomic number, the harder it is for an X-ray machine to read. Most X-ray machines are designed with a photon energy high enough that low atomic number things, like carbon or the oxygen in water, are fairly transparent, so that things like the calcium in bones, or the metal in weapons, show up more clearly. Number 6. Did you know that the tiniest and largest cells in the human body are both crucial for reproduction? The female ovum egg is the largest human cell, measuring about 1 millimeter in size. That's roughly the width of a piece of hair, and just big enough to be seen with the naked eye if you have sharp vision. On the flip side, the male sperm cell is the smallest, designed to be sleek and efficient for its journey. It's fascinating how these two cells, at opposite ends of the size spectrum, come together to create life. Nature's contrasts truly make reproduction a remarkable process. Number 7. The Titanic's owners never said it was unsinkable. A key detail in the telling of the story of the Titanic is the hubris of the ship's owners, who claimed it could not be sunk. In fact, the White Star Line never actually used that phrase. As historian Richard Howells explains, the population as a whole were unlikely to have thought of the Titanic as a unique, unsinkable ship before its maiden voyage. Number 8. A village in India plants trees every time a baby girl is born. When the leader of Piplantri, a small village in Rajasthan, India, lost his 16-year-old daughter in 2006, he decided to turn his grief into something beautiful. In order to ensure that the village treasured each baby girl, since daughters were not traditionally valued as much as sons, He set up an initiative that sees trees planted every time a girl is born in the village, according to The Guardian. The new baby's parents also sign a legal affidavit confirming their daughter will receive an education and will not be married before she is of legal age. As of 2018, 350,000 trees had been planted. Number 9. A gallon of gasoline contains 31,000 calories. If you could drink gasoline, it would provide you with 31,000 calories of energy, the equivalent of 15 to 20 days worth of food. Scientists figured this out when they were trying to compare the efficiency of a car to that of a human pedaling a bicycle by calculating how many calories it takes to bike for 1 mile at 15 miles per hour. They found out that a person could bike about 912 miles on a single gallon of gas. Number 10. The United Kingdom is the world's most tornado-prone country. When you think of the UK, tornadoes likely aren't the first thing that comes to mind. But according to the National Climatic Data Centre, the UK has more tornadoes relative to its landmass than any other nation. So while Argentina, Bangladesh, New Zealand, and Japan, as well as America's famous Tornado Alley in the Midwest, all suffer from tornadoes, there's nothing quite so classically British as a tornado. Number 11. Put in a big enough bathtub, Saturn would float. Imagine having a bathtub so enormous that you could fit a whole planet inside. If you did, Saturn would actually float. This is because Saturn is made mostly of hydrogen and helium, making it less dense than water. Although Saturn isn't a solid, rigid object, theoretically, its overall density is low enough for it to bob on water like a colossal rubber ducky. Of course, setting up such an experiment would require an unimaginably large laboratory, but it's fun to think about. Isn't it fascinating how the gas giant Saturn, with all its rings and moons, could simply float in a cosmic bathtub? Number 12. Yes, you can feel when someone is looking at you. It's called gaze detection, and it's the sense your brain uses when it feels someone staring at you. Research has shown that certain brain cells fire in response to when someone is staring right at you, but not when the observer's gaze is averted, just a few degrees to the left or right of you, which causes different cells to fire instead. We've evolved with this ability in order to sense potential threats, as the direct gaze is a symbol of dominance. Number 13. Purdue University created a licking machine to finish Tootsie Pops. Ever wondered how many licks it takes to reach the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop? Purdue University took on the challenge with a specially designed licking machine. This unique contraption managed to get to the chewy center in 364 licks. Surprisingly, human volunteers outpaced the machine, averaging just 252 licks to reach the prize. This fun and quirky experiment not only satisfied our curiosity, but also showcased the playful side of scientific research. Number 14. It's hard to make swords as strong as the Vikings. You'd think with all our technological developments that it would be easy to recreate weapons the Vikings made hundreds of years ago. Turns out, not so much. Nova looked at modern swordsmiths trying to recreate Ulberft swords made of crucible steel. They managed to pull it off, but just barely. Turns out the ancient Vikings were pretty skillful engineers. Number 15. David Letterman once created a scholarship for C students. In 1985, late-night TV legend David Letterman, who wasn't exactly a straight-A student, decided to celebrate creativity over academic perfection. He created a scholarship specifically for C students at Ball State University in Indiana, his alma mater. Instead of requiring stellar grades, the scholarship rewarded telecommunications students who showcased exceptional creativity. Applicants were asked to submit innovative projects, such as writing or interactive media. This unconventional scholarship highlighted Letterman's belief that creativity and original thinking are just as valuable as academic excellence. So, if you've got a creative spark but not a perfect GPA, remember that even C students can shine brightly. Number 16. Dopamine levels in the brain can determine what political party you choose. Imagine your brain's dopamine levels playing a role in your political leanings. People with high dopamine levels, who love abstract ideas and thinking about the future, often find themselves drawn to liberal ideologies. They're the ones dreaming up new possibilities and advocating for change. On the flip side, those with lower dopamine levels, who prefer stability and contentment with the present, often lean conservative. They appreciate tradition and the way things are, So, next time you find yourself in a political debate, you might just have your brain chemistry to thank for your viewpoints. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button so you make sure to never miss our videos. Number 17. The placebo effect still works when you know you took a placebo. Scientists have found that the placebo effect does not have to rely on the person not realizing they've taken a placebo. In a study from Harvard University and the University of Basel, those who unknowingly took a placebo supposed to relieve pain, and those who knowingly received the dummy drugs both showed relief from pain. Number 18. Ants refuse medical assistance when they know they are mortally wounded. To avoid wasting the colony's resources, seriously injured ants will refuse the help of paramedic ants that would usually try to help them. As National Geographic explains, the dying ants refuse to cooperate, flailing their legs around when probed or picked up, forcing their helpers to abandon them. Number 19. Nautical mile speed is measured by knots because they used knots to measure it. Back in the 17th century, sailors measured the speed of their ship by using a contraption called a common log, a coil of rope with equally spaced knots attached to a piece of wood. The piece of wood was lowered from the back of the ship and allowed to float behind it. Free from the coil, it was attached on the ship. After a specific time had passed, the line was pulled in, and the number of knots between the rope and the ship were counted. The speed would be the resulting number of knots. Number 20. Police horses in Toronto have their own trading cards. Like baseball players or Pokemon, the four-legged members of the Toronto Police Service Mounted Unit get their own deck of trading cards. The passion project of a pair of horse enthusiasts, the effort puts out a deck of cards every other year, with one of the pair taking pictures of the horses and the other designing the cards. Number 21. A father once hired a virtual hitman to kill his son's video game character. In China, a frustrated dad employed a skilled gamer to repeatedly kill his unemployed son's in-game character, hoping this would push him to find a job. Despite the father's creative strategy, the plan backfired. Even with his character constantly under attack, the son didn't lose interest in gaming and remained indifferent about job hunting. This quirky tale highlights the lengths some parents will go to and sparks a conversation about unconventional parenting strategies in the digital age. Number 22. A woman convicted of the death penalty was released when she survived. Imagine being given a second chance at life in the most unexpected way. In 1736 Edinburgh, Margaret Dickinson was sentenced to death by hanging for the tragic crime of killing her newborn baby. After the execution, her seemingly lifeless body was unceremoniously tossed onto a cart to be taken away. But then, something astonishing happened. Margaret awoke, alive. In a twist of fate, Scottish law at the time had a remarkable provision. It prohibited a person from being punished for the same crime twice. This meant that Margaret, having already been executed, was legally free to go. Number 23. A Detroit Tiger brought a table leg to the plate. In 1973, Detroit Tigers player Norm Cash decided to have some fun after a rough game. After striking out 3 times, he grabbed a table leg from the locker room and strolled up to the plate, ready to swing. When the umpire asked what on earth he was doing, Cash quipped, "Why not? I won't hit anyway." With a smirk, he tossed the table leg aside and picked up his bat. But his cheeky stunt left everyone laughing. Cash's humorous attempt at breaking his slump didn't change the game's outcome, but it sure made baseball history as one of the quirkiest moments ever. It's a reminder that even in serious sports, a little humor can go a long way. Number 24. Escalators used to be terrifying. While escalators seem pretty innocuous today, people used to really be frightened of them. When first introducing them on the London Underground, executives for the escalators manufacturer, Molam and Cochrane, tapped the services of a one-legged man named William Harris to demonstrate how safe it was, riding up and down to show that those who took it were unlikely to lose their balance. Number 25. Did you know that bulls can't actually see the color red? Despite the common belief that it's the red cape that enrages them, bulls, like other cattle, are red-green colorblind. What really gets them riled up is the movement of the matador's cape, not its color. When the fabric swings and flutters, it catches the bull's attention and incites it to charge. So next time you see a bullfight, remember it's not the fiery red hue driving the bull wild, it's the tantalizing dance of the cape. Number 26. Space travel was proposed in the 17th century. You thought space travel was a modern concept, but it turns out that English theologian John Wilkins was kicking the idea around in the 1600s. In his books, he suggested that flying chariots could take men to the moon, which he believed were inhabited by other beings that could prove to be great trade partners. Though there were a few blind spots in his plan, he believed that astronauts wouldn't need any special equipment to breathe because they would just grow used to the purer air high in the sky. Number 27. Sharp knives are safer than dull knives. Sharp knives aren't actually as likely to cut you as dull ones. Because a sharp knife easily slices through food, you only have to apply a small amount of pressure when using them. This means that you're more likely to cut the item you're intending to cut, and not your hand. Dull knives, however, can't cut through food easily, and often cause injuries when resistance between the dull blade and the food's surface suddenly gives way, at which point the knife flies out of control. Since you have to use so much pressure to cut with a dull knife, they often cause deep cuts and gouges, as opposed to the minor nicks a sharper knife might inflict. Keep your knives sharp and hone those skills for maximum safety. Number 28. Women can give birth after they die. It's very rare, but it has been known to happen. Called coffin birth, it's a phenomenon that occurs when a pregnant woman delivers a child spontaneously after her death, due to gases that built up in the abdominal area, putting pressure on the mother's uterus and forcing the baby out the birth passageway. One example of this was discovered in 2010 in the grave of a medieval woman who was buried in Italy. Number 29. Jane Austen referenced baseball 40 years before it was officially invented. While it's commonly believed that baseball was invented in Cooperstown, New York, in 1839, Jane Austen referenced the sport 40 years earlier. In the opening pages of Northanger Abbey in 1797, Austen wrote, "It was not very wonderful that Catherine, who had nothing heroic about her, should prefer cricket, baseball, riding on horseback, and running about the country at the age of 14 to books." Author Julian Norwich thinks that it was a term that Austen's readers would have to have been familiar with since she didn't bother to explain it further. He says that means there is no doubt baseball was being played in Britain in the late 18th century, and equally no doubt that it traveled to America. Number 30. A soldier once survived a free fall of 22,000 feet. Alan McGee, an American gunner during World War II, survived a fall of 22,000 feet without a parachute when his B-17 was shot and caught fire. He passed out on the way down due to shock and a lack of oxygen that high up, but woke up to find that he had fallen through the glass roof of the train station of a small German town. He was treated and became a prisoner of war for 2 years. That's all for today. Subscribe to our channel for more fun videos.